Knowledge for Men, episode 46.
Welcome to KnowledgeForMen.com, where boys turn into men, where men turn into leaders, into lions, the ferocious few who stand strong, a place where you grow to become the man you were born to be. It's time to take massive action towards the life you want. Get the health, get the relationships, business, and career you've always dreamed of. Achieve a level of success and happiness that you've been searching for so many years. Life has given you enough, and it's time to take a stand and take full control of your life. Stand with us as we interview the most inspiring and successful leaders to give you real-world advice to crush life and awaken the sleeping giant inside of you.
This episode is brought to you by my private online meds group called The Lion's Den. You can check it out at knowledgeformen.com and click on The Lion's Den. If you've been listening to this podcast and you like the content, but find it hard to find other guys out there to relate to, talk to, share your wins and challenges with, maybe you're on your own path of personal development and other guys think it's weird or they're just not interested in what you're doing. You kind of feel like you're alone on this mission, but you're not. There's thousands of other guys out there who are on the same path, and I've been putting together a group called The Lion's Den to try and find these guys, bring them together. Hey, I know it's hard to make the push towards greatness in your life, and I found that the best way to get somewhere you've never been is to surround yourself with other people who are already there or who are on the same path as you. So The Lion's Den does just that. It's a group of men who want to achieve greatness in all areas of life: health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth. Check it out at knowledgeformen.com and click on The Lion's Den.
All right, guys, I'm here with Jordan Belfort. And just a little background about him. In the 1990s, he built one of the most dynamic and successful sales organizations in Wall Street history. During that time, he soared to the highest financial heights, earning over $50 million a year, a feat that coined him the name the Wolf of Wall Street. As the owner of Stratton Oakmont, Belfort employed over 1,000 stockbrokers and raised over $1.5 billion and started more than $30 million companies from scratch. Along the way, he succumbed to some of the traps of the high-flying Wall Street lifestyle, going through a spectacular and well-publicized fall from grace. Jordan's two international best-selling memoirs, The Wolf of Wall Street and Catching the Wolf of Wall Street, have been published in over 40 countries and translated into 18 languages. His life story has been turned into an Oscar-nominated major motion picture starring Leonardo DiCaprio and directed by Martin Scorsese in The Wolf of Wall Street. All right, Jordan, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. A mouthful, by the way. Wow, that's a big introduction. There's nothing left to say. It is. I'll see you later.
All right. That's the interview, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's now dive in, Jordan, with a favorite success quote of yours and why.
For me, I kind of have two. Can I give you two? Because one of them is sort of a moral success quote, and one's more of one that's sort of uplifting for people who are listening to it. So the first one would be, success in the absence of ethics and integrity is not success at all. That's one quote that I really live by these days, that I didn't live by back when I was, engaged in the insanity of building that massive Wall Street firm. So my point there is that, if you're not achieving success while maintaining your personal ethical code and having integrity, then it's really failure no matter how much money you make. That's one part of the equation. The other part of a quote that I really live by, and this is one that I think everyone should live by, is we are not the mistakes of our past. We're the resources and capabilities we glean from our past. And that's, to me, is probably one of the most empowering ideas that you could really live by. It allows you to sort of look back at the things that happened in your life and turn them into lessons without having them paralyze you with fear and guilt and all the other disempowering emotions that just simply make you live in the past versus learning from the past. And I've used that not just in business, but I've used it with my own family, my children, my sons made mistakes, to realize that every time you make a mistake, you grow stronger so long as you're willing to learn from the mistake and not let it disempower you.
And these two quotes reflect a lot back on your past.
Yeah.
Yet, before we dive into some of the lessons you've learned, can you share with the audience your wild journey of how you got started and how you got to where you are now?
Okay. So basically, I was a born entrepreneur from the time I emerged from my mother's womb. At the age of 8, I had a paper route. At the age of 10, I was shoveling driveways after snowstorms in New York for $20 a pop. I was doing magic shows at 12. And then I hit big for the first time at 16, where I was selling ices on the local beach in New York, Jones Beach, and I was making massive money. It was a huge hit. I was making about $400 per day first year. This is 1978. when I was still in high school, and 30,000 for summer, and then even more after that. And I used that money to put myself through school, college, and then I graduated and had one misstep on the road to entrepreneurial success, and that was I spent one day in dental school because my mom, instilled this belief in me since I was very young. When I was sitting in a high chair and she was spoon-feeding me applesauce, she would say, the only noble way to become wealthy is you got to be a doctor. And it's like hypnosis. So I applied to medical school and dental school. I got into both and decided to be a dentist because it was a quicker path to wealth. I'd still be Dr. Belfort. So I walked into dental school, and the first day, the dean stood up in front of 105 students and said, welcome to the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, but let me say this. The golden age of dentistry is over. If you're here to make a lot of money, you're probably in the wrong place. And with that, I got up and said, excuse me, and I dropped out the first day. From there, I went back up to New York, and I answered a blind ad in the newspaper and got a job as a door-to-door salesman. And that really defined my, what happened next. I became instantly the first day the word started to flow, and I became the top salesman in the company day one, broke the company records over the following weeks. And then I said to myself, wow, why should I work for these bozos? They weren't that organized. Started my own meat and seafood company and built it up to 26 trucks very quickly. Thought I was making a ton of money, but was actually making every mistake a young entrepreneur can make. I was overexpanding. I was undercapitalized. I was growing on credit. And just like that, when the barbecue season ended and the winter set in and sales slowed, I went bankrupt and lost everything. So I was 24 years old, greatest salesman even then. I was, really amazing at it. And I heard a rumor about a kid I knew who was down on Wall Street making massive money, $1 million a year. I didn't believe it, but found that it was true. And I was able to actually go down to Wall Street, sell myself a job, because at that point I wasn't looking great in the resume department. I was a dental school dropout who just declared bankruptcy. Hire me, right? So I had to sell myself a job, and I went into a big firm, LF Rothschild back then, big firm, member firm, New York Stock Exchange. And I work hard. I'm in the interim, like, I'll work harder, I can close better, and I go on. And the guy's like, whoa, because I never heard anyone talk like this. He goes, either one of two things are going to happen to you. Either you're going to be the biggest broker in Wall Street history, or you're going to end up in jail. Like, I was a genius. He was right on both accounts. So anyway, I went through this training program for 6 months, and my first day when I was finally a stockbroker was Black Monday, and the market crashed, went down 508 points. Firm closed after 100 years in business, and that's what put me into the penny stock market. And I answered a blind ad, and it was for a Long Island firm. I walked in. It was selling penny stocks. I broke the company record again, and I had this amazing ability, a pitch I was developing, and then ultimately I started my own firm 8 months later. And that was when I discovered this untapped niche in the market, which was selling $5 stocks to the richest 1% of Americans, which forced me to crack the code for training these young salesmen I was employing at the time. They were maybe 18 to 22 years old, average IQ, Forrest Gump on 3 hits of acid, no natural sales ability. I had to figure out a way to train them to sell to the richest 1% of Americans who are very tough sales. And I invented a system out of sheer just frustration and necessity. They say necessity is the mother of invention. I invented a system which came to be known as the straight line system, because I drew a long, thin line on the board. That was the basis for teaching these people take control of a sale, a situation of influence, and move someone down this line and from the open to the close. And what happened next was astonishing. I mean, these kids went from not being able to close a sale to becoming the most successful closers in Wall Street and started making massive money. I went from making $500,000 a year to making $15 million a year. Kids began pouring in from all over the country for jobs, and then of course I overgrew the firm, and my ability to create good deals didn't keep up with my hiring. I should have slowed down my growth, and that was the beginning of the end. And it went on to 9 years, but I lost my ethical way early on. About 2 years in business. The beginning was all good intentions, and made a mistake, took a bag of cash from someone, and that started my descent down to the dark side of the force. And eventually, 9 years later, it caught up with me. I got sober though, because I was doing massive drugs along the way, but got sober. Then I got indicted for smuggling money to Switzerland, and then ultimately stock fraud, and pled guilty, go to jail for 22 months. But when I get to jail, who's my bunkmate? Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. Believe it or not, they put me in with him. So we were, telling each other stories at night. So he convinced me to write this book. In the beginning, I couldn't write. Ultimately, I taught myself to write. In the same way I've cracked the code for selling and entrepreneurship and all these things, I taught myself to write and wrote this book, and lo and behold, it became an international runaway bestseller. And then Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt were having a bidding war over it even before it was released. I sold it to Leo, and Marty Scorsese became attached. And then the first draft of the script was written. It was amazing, and they greenlit the movie. But then the writer's strike hit, which delayed it for 5 or 6 years, and then finally it all came together again. The good part was, over those 5 years, I built a really big business in teaching people around the world how to be entrepreneurs and salespeople. And Marty and Leo were so impressed with that business I built because they met me. I was, had no money. I became wealthy again. They couldn't believe it. And they changed the ending of the movie to reflect my new business. So instead of it ending in jail like the first draft, the second, third act now is about me doing seminars with infomercials. So, of course, that had a nice impact on my business. And now I'm really going around the world and doing massive amount of seminars and training and corporate consulting and charity work in places like Africa. So it's been an amazing journey. And that's the story.
You just went through the entire book, The Wolf of Wall Street, in a little bit more than 3 minutes. And there's so many lessons inside of there. And looking back, Jordan, what were some of the biggest lessons you learned from living a life of excess?
Well, I'd definitely say drugs are bad. I mean, I was taking massive quantities of drugs, massive cocaine, Quaaludes.
And Jordan, real quick, what are Quaaludes? Those are beyond my time.
Quaaludes are my drug of choice. They're like downers, but they make you feel really euphoric, and then you get a little sleepy, so you take some Coke, and then I get anxiety, so I take from the Coke, so I take some Xanax, but I still couldn't sleep, so I took some Ambien, then I smoked a little pot, then washed it all down with some alcohol, and so on and so forth, and that escalated over time until I was doing 22 drugs at the same time, and I finally got sober in 1997. So, listen, obviously, when I started doing drugs, people say, well, was it the drugs that made you commit the crime, smuggling money and stock fraud? And the answer is no. It allowed me to deal with it after I'd already done what I had done. And the reason I did what I did was probably fueled by greed more than anything, and getting caught up in the Gordon Gekko-esque persona where greed is good. And, I've learned now that it's not greed that's good, but it's ambition, passion that's good. And that distinction was lost on me because greed's really about making as much as you can, as fast as you can. A lot of it's fueled by instant gratification. And now I know better. I think writing the book was such an unbelievable life-changing experience for me because it forced me to really look inside myself. And when you write a memoir like that yourself, I'm never a ghostwriter, I peeled back all the layers of my own psyche, and I learned so much about my strengths and weaknesses, and also that desire for instant gratification, how it corrupted me and all this sort of stuff. And now I'm able to really look at things very, very differently, and I've grown my business over a period of time by working very, very hard and giving massive value to people, and then the money comes afterwards. So
okay, so you obviously climbed back from hitting rock bottom, and maybe this was a blessing in disguise to help you get to where you are now. But let's say you never got caught. Would you have continued doing what you were doing?
No, I was already out of it. I was out of it. The movie's fictionalized. I left the firm. The movie has me giving that speech and saying, I'm not leaving. But I left. I didn't stay. I left and went and ran Steve Madden Shoes, which I was the largest shareholder of. And I built Steve Madden Shoes up to $100+ million before I left there. And then I finally got sober after that. So the answer is no, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be probably doing investment banking deals on the side. I was living a life of excess. But, listen, there's no doubt that getting caught has turned out to be the most amazing thing that could ever happen. I mean, who would ever think that? But God Almighty, look what happened. I mean, I can't even believe what's happened. Because, but like when I was going through it, it wasn't like that. I was miserable. It was terrible. It was awful. It was embarrassing, and you can't imagine what it's like to go from where I was to hit rock bottom, be publicly vilified and smeared, and lose your children and your freedom and your money and everything, your self-respect and all that stuff. And I think that one of the things that the reason why my seminars and my talks around the world, why they do so well, is because that inspires people, that comeback. People look at that and they say, wow. They say, well, first of all, what are the strategies this guy is using? How does he build these businesses from scratch? How does he, when every odd against him, he's faced with a fine, he has no credit, he's got no one to talk to, how does he do that, right? That's pretty inspiring to people. And the second aspect is emotionally, how did he do it? So there's two sides to the coin here. What were the strategies of entrepreneurship and sales and marketing and building a business and leverage and human resources, and how do you employ how do you do that? And I'm an expert at that. I've been doing it since I'm very, very young, and really for the first time in an organized way when I was in my early 20s with the meat business, where I failed miserably, and I learned, of course, massively from that. You learn far more from your failures than you do from your successes. So that was really the benchmark for me of starting my brokerage firm and not making those same mistakes. I made new mistakes, like growing too fast. And that's the other side of the equation. So, on one side, it's called, learning how to fail elegantly. How do you go into business, test an idea? How do you try something? And if you're wrong, be able to maximize the lessons and minimize the pain and not be destroyed by it. On the flip side of that equation is learning how to succeed wildly once you have an idea that's working, how do you grow it? How do you sustain it? How do you leverage it? How do you do all the things you need to do to turn a small company into a big company? How do you essentially add a zero onto your income? And I did that really, really well at Stratton, but I missed some important things along the way. And one of them was not grounding the business in ethics and integrity and not and almost growing too fast. So I've experienced, and of course it was Steve Madden, which is now a $3.5–4 billion company. So I've experienced probably 20 massive successes in my life and had some miserable failures as well. And the fact that I lost it all, I had to go to jail and then came back is sort of the icing on the cake that sort of allows people to look at my life and say, wow, I mean, what does that guy have that allows him to bounce back like that? It's like the bounce back king. So, and that gives me a platform, and then I can teach them the rules of business and entrepreneurship, and of course, what I'm known most for in the world of selling, in terms of teaching people how to close and influence. And the one distinction that's important is that it's not just the salespeople. When I go out and give talks, it's mostly 20% of the room is salespeople. It's mostly entrepreneurs looking how to become more effective in the workplace. How do you sell your vision to your employees? How do you learn to close deals yourself, whether it's closing suppliers on better credit terms, closing on the right property, being able to close the employees on working for you. It's, sales, influence, persuasion is the cornerstone skill to making money. It's certainly not the only skill. You need to learn how to market. You need to learn how to run a business. You need to learn how to take your money and have your money make money for you. And those are all the outer game distinctions that lead people to wealth and success. And then you have on the other side the inner game distinctions, the ability to manage your emotional state, your beliefs that either empower you or disempower you, the limiting beliefs which disempower you lead you to miserable failure, and the empowering beliefs set you up for success. And you have your vision that you create, your ability to focus on that vision, your standards for excellence that you need to hold yourself to. And you have all those distinctions wrapped up into one, you can't help but be rich. So when I go out there and give a seminar, rather than trying to figure out everybody's business and on an individual basis, what I realize is the easiest way, the reason I've been able to be so successful, most people aren't with entrepreneurs and salespeople, is I give them a formula for success that works for anything. And then I actually have them get specific for their businesses, but I teach them a framework of overall success, and then they can apply that to their business. And we go through that, of course, as well. But the framework is there, and it's so logical that you can't argue with it, and that empowers people. And especially the sales part, it really shifts people from that voice that's in the back of their head to saying, I can't do it, I'm not capable of greatness, and they leave feeling a very different way, that they can do whatever they want to do, and they can exceed their own expectations for themselves, and they are capable of greatness. So that's it wrapped up into one little bow.
And I know you teach a lot of those sales strategies in your upcoming seminars, but what I want to focus on is, how did you emotionally come back? Like, I want to understand how your mind works, like who you are, Jordan Belfort, as a person. What kept you going? I mean, you hit rock bottom, and I'm sure you had some dark thoughts at the time.
Right.
A lot of people wouldn't be able to do what you did. You bounced back.
Right.
And, I believe it's not the businesses that or the market that you're involved in. It's you. It's who you are.
Right. Yeah, of course, and because the same rules apply. But at the heart of that emotional comeback, the ability to motivate yourself, the ability to tap into that resource that we all have, by the way, that allows us to accomplish anything, it starts with understanding your why. Why becoming successful? Why coming back? Why does it really matter to you? At the deepest level, why do you want to come back? Most people say, because I want to be rich again. I want to have nice things. That's not why. That's not a powerful enough reason why. For me, at my darkest hour, when I was sitting in jail and just surrounded by arguably what could be considered the lowest people on the planet in that moment. There are a lot of good people who make mistakes and go to jail, but in that moment, you're surrounded by all these people with disempowered and thinking negatively, and a lot of them are scum of the earth, no doubt about it. They're there because they belong there. And there are people like Tommy Chong who don't belong there. So you have a mix, but there's a lot of disempowered people. And for me, what I tapped into was the faces of my children. I knew that what had happened had such a negative impact on the lives of my children, and the thought of me not somehow rectifying that, not proving to my children that I was a dad they could be proud of, and a dad that would go out and achieve, and to give those lessons to my children that you can come back from anything, that's what drove me. And I knew, because I was in touch, because I understand how psychology works in success, And I understood that I had to tap into both my biggest pain point for me, and that was to let my children down again and to give up and not allow them to have their future secure, not to be able to send them to the finest schools. If they got sick, not to be able to give them medical. All those things that, as a parent who truly loved his children, that were impossibilities for me. So that's what I used as my chief motivating factor above everything, and everything flowed from there. When I got out of jail and I started writing my book, and I was on page 15, and it was a daunting task that, most people would say you would never finish, and I felt that way. I never thought I'd finish the book. And I looked at my daughter, who was older than my son at the point, and I said, guess what? Your daddy's going to become an author, and he's going to write a bestseller. And she's like, oh, my God, Mommy, guess what, Daddy's? And then I had no choice. I put it out there with someone that refused to let down again, and I had no freaking choice but to write this book and put my heart and soul. I told my son, and oh my God, Daddy's gonna be a writer. What do I do now? Stop. I was just kidding. Your dad's a loser. I couldn't give up. So I almost, by understanding what my deepest pain points were, rather than letting them paralyze me, I used them to empower me. That's the secret to doing things that you never thought you could do. And that's one of the things I teach people because that it's easier said than done. I just laid it out for you, but how do you actually do that? Well, there are strategies that they take a little while that we go through that really allow you to tap into it and become something that you really didn't think you were. But for me, it's who I've been, because I was sort of born with that psychology, but that can be learned. It's not a gift for the select few. That ability to come back, that ability to empower yourself at any moment in your life, the ability to reframe negatives into positives, that can be taught.
Okay, so what can we learn from that? That's what I'm thinking. How can we take that and apply those strategies into our own lives? I mean, breaking this down into a simple process. We're talking about dramatic improvements in our life with that concept. And I see that you kind of break this down into something called the 4 things that you need to be wildly successful. And can you go ahead and share with the audience what this is and how it came to be?
Well, the 4 things that you need to be wildly successful comes from a very, very early speech I gave before I refused to talk about business and I refused to talk about sales. Because when I first got into the speaking business, I had my own limiting beliefs that were holding me back. And I said, I can't teach the straight line system because it's so powerful. It's so effective that I teach to people, they get hurt and rip people off again. That's what I weird belief I was hanging on. It's like saying a gun is evil. Well, I guess it depends who's holding it. If it's a wife who's with her children at home and if people break in and she pulls out the M16 and blows away 3 criminals, that's a really good weapon, that gun. However, if some maniac steps up on a water tower and starts blowing away innocent people, then it's a pretty evil thing. It's the same thing with the straight line. The straight line's a weapon for good or evil, okay? It shows you how to close people that you normally couldn't close and to convey a message that you normally couldn't convey, and it shows you how to do it elegantly without pressure, and it's incredibly effective. If you choose to use that to hurt people, that's pretty freaking evil, okay? So in my seminars, I really am steadfast to implore people and reinforce that you need to use it ethically. In fact, I even make them sign something because, you sign something, you tend to stick to it and so forth. In terms of the 4 things, I'll tell you what they were. They were the ability to manage your emotional state. So what I really did is I just took things that were sort of on the inner game that I thought was safe to teach you. The second thing was your beliefs, to have empowering beliefs. The third thing was to have high standards, to make sure you have a high standard for success. And the 4th thing was the blanket for all the stuff I refused to talk about was called strategies, meaning the strategies to make it real. What are the entrepreneurial strategies, the sales strategies? I refused to talk about it, so I just called them strategies because I just didn't want to teach people how to succeed because of what had happened last time. And then, eventually I broke through that. Leo and I became good friends, and he's like, what are you, nuts? I mean, what are you talking about? It's like the craziest thing I've ever heard. And he was one of the people, he wrote me a letter and gave me a testimonial, and ultimately my business, as soon as I switched my message to actually real business skills, it was game over. I went from people clapping when I spoke to people freaking out and writing me a letter saying you changed my life, because the business skills is what most people don't teach you. You have some really great motivators out there, who are really great. They have a great message. They'll get people jumping and dancing and putting their hands up in the air and screaming the word yes, yes, and it's great, and that works. But in the absence of the business skills, it's worthless. It becomes self-delusion, because if you can't make it real, then it's just idiocy. I'm a success. I'm a success. You look in the mirror and you say, you're not a success. You don't know the rules of success. You got to learn. You got to learn how to be an entrepreneur. You got to learn how to sell. You got to learn how to market. Without that, good luck trying to make money. good luck trying to make your vision into a reality. So in the beginning, I was just simply fearful to do it because I was so good at it. I was like, if I do this, kids are going to go out there and commit fraud again. It's idiotic to think that. But that was what was holding me back.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that even yourself, who's seen so much business success, still has limiting beliefs. And it just kind of shows that in the end, we're all human. So, Jordan, do you now have a new definition of success as your career has evolved over the last decade and coming out of prison?
Yeah, I mean, I think I consider success right now is to leave the world in a better place than when you found it. But to me, success means giving people massive value and being able to monetize that value in a way that you're empowering people, making a ton of money yourself, and then spreading that wealth around. So a true success takes his money and spreads it around and helps people and empowers people and spreads a message of self-empowerment. And I think to me, that's what I try to do. I try to live that every single day. Sometimes I'll look at my schedule and I'll say, what the hell am I doing here? I'm going to be traveling for 200 days straight. And then I say, you know what? I kind of owe that to people because people send me letters from all over the world begging me to come to their countries. And people send me letters saying I've changed their lives just by watching my YouTube videos or they've attended my seminars. And sort of like part of the fabric of who I am is I have a message and I have this ability and I owe it to people to teach to them. And by the way, and to make a lot of money from that, that's great. That's what business is all about, to be able to give massive value and to get paid for that value. And, my goal is to give 10 times as much value as people pay me. And I would tell you that when I go out there, everyone always says, wow, I would have paid a lot more for what I learned than that. And that's, to me, is true success.
All right. And Jordan, let's now take this entire interview 3 steps deeper and let's go into the knowledge round. Here we go.
All right, I want to give you more details about the Lion's Den. It's a private Facebook group where you post your goals in health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth. The guys hold you accountable, and you have a place where you can get instant feedback from other high-performing men from around the world. You can get more details at knowledgeformen.com and click on the Lion's Den. There's men's coaches in there, there's dating coaches, fitness coaches, millionaires, guys with startups, guys who just graduated college and are happy to be surrounded by so many guys just making it happen for themselves. There's fathers in there, military personnel, and just all walks of life from all over the world. 70 guys strong right now and growing every day. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we just want to achieve greatness. We want to push ourselves. We want to challenge ourselves. We want to really just become the men we want to become and do it not alone. We don't want to do this journey, take this path alone. We want to do it together with other men. And that's what I find so powerful about this group. We also do monthly Google Hangouts, which is sort of like an online meetup with about 12 guys in each hangout. So you can meet all these guys and build stronger relationships with other high-performing men. And there's also a structure to each hangout. Guys, this group only costs $19 a month for a limited time. You can get more details and you can set up a consultation with me at knowledgeformen.com and click on the Lion's Den and get started from there.
Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
All right, Jordan, how would you explain entrepreneurship to a newcomer or a wantrepreneur, somebody who wants to break through in business?
Well, I would say, listen, entrepreneurship is it's very simple. There's 2 parts to it. There's, number one, it starts with desire. Starts with you wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to be empowered, wanting to make money, because that's what entrepreneurs do, are looking to make money, wanting to be your own boss, wanting to work really hard. A myth, and sometimes it drives me crazy when I go to a seminar of someone who's really never been successful with their teaching success. They'll tell you, oh, you take this magic pill and this magic box, you'll be successful. Entrepreneurs work harder than anybody else, but they don't consider it work because it's their passion. So what I would say is there's really 3 steps to being a successful entrepreneur. One is you got to have a vision for your future, a compelling vision about what your business is about, what your company is about, what your
Welcome
message
to
is,
the
what your
Knowledge
mission
Round,
is.
where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable
Now, when you
pieces
wake up
of
out of
wisdom
bed,
to
it
help
makes you
transform
jump out of bed
their
and
lives.
drives you to do
Starting
whatever
in
you got to
3,
do ethically
2,
to succeed,
1,
meaning break
showtime.
through barriers, not get down when things aren't going your way. And, of course, there's skill sets I can't talk about some time, like failing elegantly, how do you succeed, I already mentioned those, but at the heart of it, it's a vision. And it doesn't have to just compel you. It has to move other people as well. because you can't do it alone. You're not a one-person army when you're becoming successful as an entrepreneur. You have to learn, which is now the second step, is to sell that vision to other people, to actually learn how to present that vision, to share that vision in a way that inspires people and makes them want to come and work for you and turn your vision into a reality. Most human beings don't have a vision. And every human being is thirsty for a vision. So what do? They gravitate towards someone who has a compelling vision and knows how to share that vision. So first step is learning how to create the vision. Next step is learning how to share that vision, which is sales and speaking and orating and all that sort of stuff that I teach. And then third thing is the blanket strategies, meaning you need to know what you need to know to make it real. You can't just go out there and expect to succeed in business without learning the rules of business. If you want to go become a piano player, then take some freaking piano lessons. If you want to become a tennis player, go take some tennis lessons. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you better take some lessons for that too. And that's what I do. I teach people when I give a seminar, like I'm going to be in Canada coming up in a few weeks, doing Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal. I teach people basically the skills to be an entrepreneur. And also the inner game skills that, keeps you motivated and understanding your why and raising your standards and all that sort of stuff, the beliefs and state management. And together, it's an incredibly powerful formula.
I like that. And what advice would you give to someone who's feeling lost or unsure of their purpose?
And I think that goes back to start with your vision, to state and to understand what your vision for the future is. Too many people go around setting goals, and it's very different than a vision. If you're feeling that, you're probably a goal setter, and you've gone from one goal to the next, and people who do that are typically very, very negative, because even when you do hit a goal and you're like, all right, what's next? It feels good for a second, and then we don't usually hit a lot of goals, and that's okay. Goals just serve as benchmarks on the way to your vision to see if you're heading there or not. So typically a goal-oriented person without the absence of a higher vision feels a lack of purpose and demotivated. That's one aspect. The second thing is to identify your why you really want to do what you want to do, and that is self-motivating. So those are two things I would certainly focus on. And again, when I give a seminar, that's what I do. I teach people that sort of stuff.
All right. And Jordan, was there anything that was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Listen, a desire for instant gratification, for sure, was part of my undoing. And also the ability to rationalize. And we all do this, but I was a great rationalizer. So, when I had these sort of little ethical forks in the road, and the easy way was to take the wrong fork, the unethical fork, I rationalized it. So, versus getting honest with yourself. So I always say, one of the keys to success is getting honest with yourself. And I always say, the story that you tell yourself typically stops you from getting what you want. The reason you can't get what you want is if you start telling yourself a story. So it's like the story we tell ourselves about why we can't have what we want typically stops us from getting what we want.
And Jordan, since this is the Knowledge for Men show, what makes a man? What makes a successful man?
Well, I don't think a man who doesn't take care of their family and doesn't pay child support and doesn't look after their children because they stuck their dick somewhere and want to pretend they didn't, to me, that's not a man. All right? So for me, and again, some people are different, but my belief is that a man has to take care of their family. However much they hate their ex-wife, they have to take care of their children, and they have to be an example to their children. And that means when they fall down, they get back up and they teach the lessons. That's one aspect. Another aspect of being a man is also not abusing power that a man has. And, when you're a man of power, that means with great power comes great responsibility. And that's in a way where I wasn't a fully formed man at 25. People were calling me the king and the wolf and Gordon Gekko, and I bought into that idiocy at the time, not realizing that a true man of power, doesn't go around making money at the expense of other people. So to me, those are certainly cornerstone aspects of being a man, is taking care of your family and helping other people as you go out and building your fortune and going out to the world, securing your future for yourself and your family. So those are two aspects I think are crucial.
All right. And Jordan, can you name a person who's been a mentor to you, someone who's given you some very impactful advice? What did he or she say to you?
Well, one person who certainly has been a huge impact on my life is Tommy Chong, believe it or not, because Tommy Chong was the person who convinced me to write the book. And without that, And none of this is certainly not, listen, I'm not saying I wouldn't have been successful again. I would have been successful again, but in a very different way. Tommy Chong was the one that convinced me to write the book, and then also taught me a couple of things about writing that I really lived by. And one of the lessons he gave me was it's about the most of, meaning when you're writing, people don't want to hear about the average and the ordinary. They want to know about the extremes, because people live vicariously through when they read. They want to be moved emotionally. So that was one person that certainly had a huge impact on my life in a positive way.
All right. And Jordan, speaking of books and writing, what are your 3 most influential books and why?
Bonfire to Vanities was the book that I read that allowed me to learn how to write. I couldn't write before that. I used that like a textbook, and I picked it apart, and I found I was able to analyze and figure out Tom Wolfe's strategies for writing. There are strategies for everything. There are strategies for business. The straight line system is a strategy for closing sales and for influencing people. I looked at Tom Wolfe's writing, and I analyzed it so closely with a yellow highlight. I read the book 10 times, and I was able to crack the code for what he was doing and use that to become a writer. And then my secondary education was with Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which had a huge impact on me. So those really were the 2 books.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Sounds like some of your early days there,
Exactly.
All right. And what are 2 or 3 life skills that you really would recommend for someone to succeed in entrepreneurship, sales, or in business?
Well, in entrepreneurship, let's talk about in entrepreneurship, one of the sales. You need to be able to learn how to sell and influence and persuade. Without that, you're dead. You need to learn how to market your product. How do you get to the people that you want to sell to? One of the big holes I very often see in a sales force is the company does not support them with an effective marketing program. So they end up calling unqualified leads, or they're trying to get leads themselves. And in order for a company to truly be a great company, you need to be able to have qualified leads coming to them on a daily basis that can help a sales force have strong sales funnels versus sales funnels that are full of shit, which happens without a good marketing campaign. That's certainly another crucial element. And then the inner game of success, I would say, the cornerstone skill is, and they're all important, but I would say is having a vision and being clear about where you want to go, having a target, not a goal, but a real target for 5 years from now, where you want to be, and then learning how to focus on that vision, how to focus where you want to go versus what you're afraid of. And a lot of people do that. They focus on where they don't want to go, and they complain, and when you complain, you focus on what you don't want, and you end up crashing into it.
All right, and Jordan, here's a scenario for you. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to certainly slow down on the drugs. I would tell him not to take that first bag of cash. That was my first step over the ethical line. And I would have told him to slow down the growth of the company. Slow it down. Just, you have a brilliant thing you created, and the kids are knocking down your door. You got to be able to manufacture a good product for them to sell, or else it will reverse on itself.
All right. And Jordan, what's your philosophy on life and success?
Well, for me, my philosophy on life right now is to try to leave every person that I come into contact with in a better place, both in my professional life and my personal life. So the people I meet, the people who come to my seminars, I want to make sure that every one of them who leaves the room, or any person that touches my life in some way, they're better off for it. And that's really how I try to live.
Nice and simple philosophy. And Jordan, do you want to go ahead and leave any last parting piece of guidance or a final short story, maybe a crazy wild story of yours from back in the day? Go ahead.
I can't go through a drug. I'm just too long an interview for that. But a piece of guidance is, listen, very simple. Create a vision and learn to focus on that vision. That's the biggest mistake that people make. Also, not to have laser-guided focus, but to have what's called a bifurcated focus, meaning that as you're focusing on your vision, you're also scanning the horizon for other opportunities, tunnel vision, and then integrate opportunities into your vision. Very often you don't succeed in the way you originally thought. It's from something that came into your purview while you were moving towards your vision.
All right, and Jordan, that's going to conclude the knowledge round. What's exciting you today? What's getting you up in the morning with that big smile?
Well, listen, on a professional level, what wakes me up is, I love the seminar world. I love what I do in terms of empowering entrepreneurs and salespeople. So like the tour I have coming up, I'm going to be in Canada in the beginning of May and in mid-May. And, I'm doing some big talks in Calgary and Montreal, Vancouver and Toronto. So, and then I have that on a global basis. That, doing that, I find very empowering. And then I do longer seminars. I really work with entrepreneurs on the intricacies and help them grow their business. So that stuff I just absolutely love. And I love the charity work that I do. I get to do amazing work with young kids who are impoverished and that listen to me versus other people because I've been down. They can relate to my story. So it gives you a platform to help them make change as well.
And go ahead and share the website so the listeners can get more information about your live events.
Yeah, it's wolfofwallstreet.ca. wolfofwallstreet.ca. So I suggest you go. I think some of it's sold out, but I think there's still some. I'm not sure which classes of tickets are there, but it's going to be an amazing event. I always go full out when I'm on stage, and I give as much as I can, as fast as I can, and it changes people's lives. You really get a good overview of what I teach people, and also some very specific skills with persuasion and entrepreneurship. I go general and then get very specific as well. And then the key is to get people learnable skills they can implement straight away. In other words, if I just get up there and talk in concept, it's great, but then people won't get the benefit. So what I make sure I do is I interweave in there things that are just easy to implement that people can get results in right away. So they leave the next day and they're doing things a bit differently and they're making more money, they're feeling more empowered and having more fun.
All right, and Jordan, go ahead and give yourself a plug so all the listeners can get in contact with you after the show.
My website's jordanbelfort.com is the main website, and you can find out information on my world tour there. But, again, right now I focus on, one event at a time. Right now I'm focusing on my Canadian tour, and that's wolfofwallstreet.ca. So that's going to be really just an amazing few days up there.
And Jordan, thank you so much for being on the Knowledge for Men show and sharing your journey and your lessons and your trials and tribulations of hitting rock bottom and climbing back up to the top. And the future is just so big for you and what you can achieve and do. So Jordan, thank you once again for being on the Knowledge for Men show.
Sounds good, buddy. Good deal. Take care.
All right, and that's going to wrap up episode 46 with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you be a part of a thriving community of men who want to crush it in all aspects of life. I'm on a mission here to inspire millions of guys, and with your help, we're going to make a dent in the universe. Check out knowledgeformen.com for a ton of free content that's designed to help you live a remarkable life. Again, that's knowledgeformen.com. I hope to see you there. And always remember, 2014 is the official year of the crush, where we take action to get the life we've always dreamed of. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and until next time, let's do it.